Hi, hey guys, how's it going? It's Jordan here. We are doing a practice along on two really valuable tricks that you can use in each hand. So we're going to be working with arpeggios and kind of broken chord and pattern stuff in the right hand, and then we're going to be working with some melody ideas in the left. And I actually came up with this lesson when I was practicing one of my favorite Christmas songs, and that's Carol of the Bells. I was doing this that minor thirds melody. And then I was working with this broken chord pattern in the left hand to accompany it. I was just doing this really, really simple stuff, kind of rolling my triads out in the left hand. So that's really simple. And then when I stacked them together, I was like, oh man, this is a really brain twister of an exercise, because it sounds like this. So we're going to build up to that, and we're going to learn that by the end of this lesson, how that works, and how to kind of compartmentalize both parts of your brain, because that little challenge there works on the holy grail of all piano players, the things that they struggle with, and that's hand independence. So that's a huge hand independence thing. But before we do that, we are just going to go down to the super basics here. We're going to do a little exercise in the time signature 6/8. So I'm going to just let my metronome run just in case you're like super new. And want to just hear how this works. So we're counting in groups of 6. So I'm at 90 BPM on the metronome here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So how that works as far as our musical pattern is I have in my left hand here just a C major arpeggio going up and down. So I'm playing my C major triad, and then my thumb up top is capping it off with the octave. And when you hear that, I'm going to play this along to the click track in that 6/8 time, and you'll hear how it cycles. For here we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So notice as I'm playing that the two notes, or the two fingers, or however you want to visualize this, that actually land on the beat are the two C notes, or my pinky finger and my thumb. So if I just want to play the notes that land on the beat, I can just do this. Kind of simplifies things. So these are the beat notes. And my middle fingers, they're sort of the transition notes, if you want to think of them as that. Right? So the mentality that you can have as you're working with arpeggios, think of them almost as like smoothed over octaves. You can just do this and still have a rhythmic pulse, but they're just really big leaps to kind of listen to in the ear, right? Pretty quickly the music goes away, and all of a sudden you're just kind of waiting for something to happen. But now it's all of a sudden like, oh, that sounds pretty. So that's the mentality that I have for my left hand when I'm doing these arpeggio patterns. Is if I'm working with a 4-note arpeggio, where I have the octave on top, so I have the same notes in the bottom and the top. I'm thinking about them as though I'm just playing straight, kind of a straight octave, right? So with that in mind, we're going to try something here where we're going to run this arpeggio motion. And once we get comfortable with it, we're going to bring in our right hand, and we're just going to start off the first 5 notes of our C major scale. And again, if this arpeggio motion is a little tricky for you, you can just go, you can just start off like this. Okay, so we're gonna set up the metronome. So we're at 90 BPM, and if you find you're lagging, or you find that you're having difficulty, sticking to that click, just simplify what you're doing. Stay musical with it and try to keep the essence of what you're doing. But if you got to take some notes out, or if you got to take out these middle notes here in your left hand, that's totally fine. Just kind of go back to octaves, or even just make them, kind of stretch them out a bit. But your objective with this exercise is to have your left hand become totally automatic, where you can just kind of do it in your sleep. Because that allows you to think about the right hand as your, it's like your main character or something. It's your main actor or something in your little improv. Okay. Oh, sorry. We'll go on the one here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you want to just do the octaves, to make sure that we're synced up and in time, that's totally fine. And if you want to challenge yourself, try playing the whole scale in the right hand. So we're going to do that now. I'm just going to stay in octaves here in the left hand. Here we go. Okay, so that's helping you think about that thumb tuck. Now try the whole arpeggio. So that's going up. Let's try going down the scale. also experiment with different ways to finish it. Finish your melody line. Because eventually you start to realize, oh, melodies are just kind of different ways of playing scales. At least when you're just starting out, you can stick with just one key. And if you want to change your arpeggio, you can do that. Because right now we're just using our C arpeggio as our kind of bedrock. But it's always good to go to the 4 chord, as you've heard me say a million times before, I'm sure. That could be a very simple transition. In fact, if we go back to our octaves, we realize we can make a 4 chord with this same octave pulse. So I'm no longer playing my E and my G, and when I go back to playing my transition notes to make my arpeggio flow, I'm going to be playing F and A. So here we go. Okay? So the same bookends. We got C, 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 and now we have we can either see this as the key of F and play in the key of F major in the right hand and play our F major scales, or we can experiment more with C major. Back to C. All I did in my left hand was bring my middle notes back down to C position. And then the final thing, if you want to just make a nice little major key jam with arpeggios and experiment with melodies, of course that's the 5 chord. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to go back to just my octave notes. So I'm just playing C. And now I'm going to move down 1 semitone. So my C notes, down 1 semitone to play B. And it sounds kind of weird right now. That's because I don't have my middle notes in there yet. So my middle notes are going to be D and G, and that's going to make a G major triad. So just a really small little shift. Bit of a fingering difference here. I'm playing with my finger 4 rather than my finger 3 on that D. Bring it home, go back to the 1, then we're going to play all of them. To the 4 chord. Same bookend notes. Back to the 1, just shift your middle notes back down. Now to that 5 chord. I'm going to go to the 4 chord. And then go back to that 1. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. It's how I visualize it. It's how I recognize that anything that's complicated in music, it's like if you listen to something that you like and you go, oh man, that sounds complicated. How on earth am I ever going to get to the place where I can play that? Well, more often than not, at least if you're thinking like me, the thing that you like is probably pretty simple. Maybe the thing that you're impressed by is the flashiness of some fast scales or some kind of crazy chord movements or something. But the thing that actually draws your ear in is the stuff that's deceptively simple and usually just kind of consistent. It's usually about rhythm and repetition. That's what our ears tend to be attracted to. So it's one of those great, you can call it a meta skill, where it's something that you can just apply to all of music. Learning how to sort of extrapolate from a piece of music what it is in its simplest form that you like. So in the case of this arpeggio, just breaking it down to this pulse here, because we're treating our arpeggios as our rhythm engine for improvisation. And then once you just learn how to move and flow with it, which just comes through time and experimenting and just kind of continually drilling away at it, then all of a sudden your right hand can start doing all these kind of different rhythmic ideas. And of course, I just played the 1-4-5 progression there in that exercise, which is a great start because that sounds musical, and you can even make it sound really pretty if you kind of know how to work with the melody tones in your right hand. But if you want to add some minor color into it, rather than just kind of make it major, 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 you can use your arpeggio to play your minor 6 chord, your A minor chord. So here I am back in C. And again, I can play this A minor chord with my same bookend notes. My pinky and my thumb don't gotta move at all. In fact, the only note that has to move is the G up to an A. So here it comes. Now all of a sudden you have a whole new color and emotion to work with in your jam. And yeah, it's Christmas time. You can even experiment with, there's tons of Christmas melodies that work over simple chords that you can turn into arpeggios. That's just the 1-4-5 chord. Now you go to your 4 chord, your F, back to your 1, to your G chord, right, so this is like my favorite time of the year for experimenting with musical ideas and really going back to what music's really made out of, which is melody and harmony and rhythm. Because all of these Christmas carols that you hear all over, you go shopping and it's like, oh my God, how do I get out of here? But when you go back to the piano, it's like, oh wait, this is great music to use in your musical educational journey. So with that in mind, there's a challenge that I have that I was experimenting with last night, and it's using one of my favorite Christmas carols, Carol of the Bells, which is that minor, it's a super minor sounding song. Very minor, kind of moody, very wintry sounding song. It's like a winter carol. Before I go any further, I should also say, if anyone has any questions, please write them in, and I'll answer them on stream. So we're going to take a look at this this progression. So this progression uses, I'm in the key of A minor, and the chords for it are luckily quite simple. So it starts off on just an A minor chord. So that's A, C, E with the A on top. Then it moves down one step to a G chord. And then I move one step down to an F chord. And now this is the one change. That's a little more interesting. Rather than playing just an E minor chord, we play an E major chord. So don't forget about this G sharp. So we have the right hand, all it does is it's like a little E minor third exercise. So I have my A and my C, and then I just go C, B, C, A. Later on, the melody kind of builds, and then it goes from that to. So now it's E, D, E, C. So we're just going to experiment with this motion here. So let's take our same technique that we had discussed earlier. I'm going to slow myself down just a little bit because we want to make sure that we're getting all these notes right, because now we're working with a straight. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So I'm at 80 BPM. I'm just playing my A minor chord. And practice walking down to that E major chord. So A to the G to the F to the E to the A. Notice how I'm moving from chord to chord. My middle finger becomes a transitional finger. Let's do it one more time. So when I'm hitting this C note, I'm kind of using that to like hop over to my G, to the F, to that E. Okay. Okay, now we're going to get to this challenge that I introduced here, which was this thing here. Man, that's a doozy. Okay. Okay, it's 3/4. I might say that for Friday's lesson because that's that's actually really difficult to explain. But if you can figure out this this challenge here, try posting it in the forums on what I'm going to do, and see if you can unlock what these rhythms are, because I'm playing just a ascending triad in my left hand of each of these chords, so just my A, C, and E, and my right hand's going. Okay. So we're going to take a rain check on that one. Yeah. So the main piece of advice that I can give anyone out there who's wanting to think about the piano in this more kind of flowy form for accompanying yourself, is to break it down to what your top note and your bottom note of your pattern is. Because there's kind of two ways to play the piano. There's well, of course, there's many more ways to play the piano, but for the purposes of this lesson here, in accompaniment, there's either like this kind of solid there's this solid chord thing, and that just kind of allows you to, you know, you can set your rhythm, you know what your chord is, you know what you're kind of working with. But then there's this taking the individual notes of your chord and playing them separately, and that makes things much more musical. That makes things much more, at least in my opinion, that kind of allows things to flow from note to note rather than just going. You know, they each serve their own purpose. and a lot of times they work really well together. So, okay, I'm going to just do a little improvisation out. If there's no questions about that first exercise and about how to move from chord to chord, that's totally fine. If there is still questions, you just send me an email afterwards and I'll get back to you. The other thing that I want to remind you all is I've just demoed this in the key of C. But you know, take this exercise and apply it across all the keys on the piano. You could even do an exercise like at the very beginning when we were just working on that. When we were just working on that up and down scale motion. We were just staying in the key of C. Maybe try going down a half step to B. And just walk down the C major scale, but change keys. That's always a good thing to do because you're working with a totally different key signature. You know, you can make sure that you can work through each of your motions, right? Okay. Let me just see here. Okay, Marcus, I see you asked a question. I noticed in the chat here. However, for whatever reason, I'm not getting it through my email. Do you mind just typing it in the chat there, and I'll just answer it that way. Sorry about that. It'll probably pop up later. Who knows? Weird winter internet conditions. Hope everyone's all ready for Christmas. I'm getting there. We got, what, 5 days? But that ain't too bad, right? So yeah, Marcus, if you want to send that question in the chat there, do that. Otherwise, I will email you after this lesson, and I'll make sure I answer whatever it is you needed clarification on. So cool. Maybe I'll do that. So I'm going to do one last little jam with this arpeggiated motion. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have one more lesson this week, and before we take a pause for the Christmas break. And that's going to be this Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is going to be on Charlie Brown's Christmas Time is here. So I'm going to be teaching that this Friday. It's one of my favorite songs. It's an awesome intro to, well, it's perfect for this time of year, but it's also a great song to learn if you kind of want to get into some jazz chords. Okay, Marcus, I see your question here. I was wondering how you're combining hands and playing Jingle Bells when the left hand was in 6/8 time and Jingle Bells was in 4/4. That's a great question. And it does go back to that octave C thing. So I'm going to bust out the metronome here, and I'll show you what I was doing. Okay. So. So you can either count this in some division of 6. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or you can just count your pinky note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. that make sense? I hope that makes sense, because that's how I think of it. Because a lot of times I do, and that is a really useful thing to do, because you have a 4-note chord, but if you roll them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you actually have 6 beats that you play it on. So you kind of have to pull back a little bit, and rather than think about each and every note as being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I hope that makes sense. Rather than going each individual note, think of, so in which case you'd have 6 of them. Think each individual arpeggio, and that allows you to go, oh, okay, I have 4 of these arpeggios, and that's what kind of allows you to combine your 4/4 melodies with your 6/8 arpeggios. So a lot of time signature stuff is really cool that way, and that you can visualize it, or your perspective will shift depending on what angle you take on it. Yeah, cool. So that's a great question, though. That's definitely a super valuable thing to have in your back pocket mentally. Okay, so I'm just going to jam out, and then I hope to see you guys all Friday. If not, have yourselves a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you all in the new year.